But if it does not embrace already in place measure money that was committed through expenditure plans and is countermanding what the locals have wanted through a vote of the people, and you're not taking their measure or their expenditure plan in consideration and just implementing a broad brush approach, because one size, as we know, does not fit all. And they are the 2/3 of the investment in California infrastructure right now. We need to be able to recognize what works for them and not on that future planning is good, but to countermand is bad when you're talking about the locals. But is it your intention to submit the Sustainable Freight Action Plan to the United States Department of Transportation to become the state's freight plan? In other words, will the action plan supersede the California Freight Mobility Plan? I mean, we keep doing these plans, and does one supersede the other, and then the other, and then the other? When are we going to get it right?
Well, the Sustainable Freight Action Plan is intended, like I said, to unify all of the state agencies that work around freight. What it has done for us, it's set the bar a little higher. It's elevated the discussion that we're having around freight such that on equal footing, we're looking at economic competitiveness. When we put together, we're really proud of the Freight Mobility Plan, and I was glad to hear members of the last panel talk about how good that plan was. What we're saying is that plan is actually being elevated with this effort because
whichever one you submit gets funded.
And what we still have on the books, state law still requires us to do a freight mobility plan, and once due in 5 years. What this action plan does is it sets the stage such that that update will be consistent with the vision that's come out of the state action, this Sustainable Freight Action Plan. And so there's a consistency that we're building into our discussion, such that when we get to the update of the CFMP, we're not looking around to try and recreate a process. It's basically going to build off of the stakeholdership, the partnership, state agency partnerships that we've had from this particular discussion will tail into that update of the state mobility plan.
I think what I'm hearing after today's hearing and through input from agency and then also industry, that what was that report that was due last December but that it wasn't ready, and CTP, and you asked for an extension because it wasn't ready. What I think I'd like to see is that this proposal right now on the executive order get extended also, so that we actually make sure that input, and I would like, instead of maybe public hearings, is that industry is brought back in and say, okay, there's a draft, how can we make this better? Because I don't really want MBAs in school doing the cost-benefit analysis for what I would consider a very complex industry that they probably don't understand. And so I'm looking forward to GoBiz embracing the industry. And again, unless you got something to bring to the table, there's incentives or something tangible, other than words, you need to be able to give them the deference, because they're the ones that are, that's their investment in our economy. And so, working with California Air Resource Board to make sure that incentives are funded, just like we did the Carl Moyer program and all the good things that have happened. But unless you got something to offer, you got nothing. And you can be the biggest cheerleader in the world, but I want them to understand that they are a valued commodity, an absolute valued partner, and that their input is imperative to your success also. And knowing that they are the experts in logistics. And I'm not, Mr. Corey, I'm not saying your industry or your agency's not, but they do it every day. And I would love for you to make sure that you take their experts and utilize their experts and come to some kind of solution that would be a compromise. And again, I think you and I have had this conversation about attainment. Attainment is fantastic if it can be done economically. But if that last 15% or 10% is onerous at this point and technology needs to be advanced where it can become economically feasible. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the only people that pay for this, newsflash, it's the consumer. And there is a tipping point. And they will refuse at some point to pay for this. And it may be Target, who they won't buy at their stores anymore because they can't afford it. We're a highly regulated state, and we aren't competitive to other states in this nation because they don't have to. So I want to make sure that we are taking that into consideration when we have the federal government taking our TEU money and investing in other ports throughout the United States and making it more competitive for those people to take our freight away from us. Now, we can get to attainment a lot easier if everybody leaves. Then we got zero emissions because nobody's doing it. That's the option, ladies and gentlemen. We need to be able to have a balance, a thoughtful balance. But the biggest thing is that we just was acknowledged that we're the 6th largest economy in the world right now. Is it because others slipped? Because they made mistakes in their economy? I'm just saying. So all I'm asking for is to make sure that we embrace the experts' ability to, and in some sort of fashion, tell them what you're trying to accomplish, let them figure out how to get there, because they're going to probably do it better, faster, and cheaper, and probably attain more, because you challenged them. You didn't mandate them. So that's what I'm looking for, is some kind of thoughtful process that we can go forward and work with them. And with that, Mr. O'Donnell,
thank you.
all yours.
Yeah, maybe I'll offer an observation. Just watching this exercise over time come together. We look at the 3 pillars. There's the GHG reduction, there's the competitiveness, and there's the efficiency, those 3 pillars. I think the GHG reduction component, there's a place to go. There's a tangible place to go. It's the California Air Resources Board. They have a mission, they have a board, they have money. But when we look at the competitiveness and the efficiency side, I don't know that there's really a tangible place to go. I don't know that there's money now there to help with that. I mean, I've even heard you mention we're hoping to get the money allocated, et cetera. So I think that's kind of one of the struggles here, as I just observe the whole exercise of what's going on. There's 3 pillars. One of them I quite frankly check. There's a place, but the other 2, I don't know. It's really clear where we are, or really who's taking that on, or who has the resources to accomplish that, or even where the accountability is. Just an observation, but backing up, there were some comments earlier from some of the folks here. The economic modeling, is there money for that? Is there? Because I see there's been no money allocated. They can't do it. Students are going to do it. Talk to me about that.
Sure. Thank you, Chair O'Donnell, for the opportunity to clarify that. So originally the plan was that the regulating entities would perform an initial economic impact analysis, and as well as industry would perform their own analysis, and though both of those analyses would have been then given to the MBA students at that university. The plan has since changed because as I spoke earlier in the testimony, that there are gaps in state databases in terms of industry subsegment reliability data, velocity data, costs, and throughput. And so where we're at now, and also I'd like to mention that our interaction and our stakeholders are incredibly important to this process, and we take great pride in being inclusive and engaging our stakeholders to hear their input. And so where we're at now is that they helped form Action Item 6, in which GoBiz has taken the lead on and to develop those metrics, what they look like in terms of creating an economic impact model. So we don't know what those costs look like yet, but we're in the coming months, in short order, we're going to be identifying what those resource needs are. GoBiz has dedicated one full-time position towards this effort. That's all he's working on all day long. But it's likely that there are going to be other additional needs if we are unable to identify existing resources, and we'd seek through the normal budgetary process funding to undergo those activities and for that economic impact modeling.
So it wouldn't be, we'd have to wait another year till we even identify those resources and get them planned in a budget.
Well, that is the normal budgetary process. And I mean, as the comment earlier, this draft action plan is the beginning of the process, and GoBiz is taking the lead on that action item 6 to identify. It's a very involved process. You heard earlier that there's no single bullet. There isn't one size that's going to fit all to measure competitiveness. So it is a big undertaking. So we do expect have some resource needs identified if we can't find existing resources by the January governor's budget.
So with regard to the feedback we've heard today, and I've heard outside this building from the business community, how can we give them a greater comfort level with regard to the process and their input into the process? Because right now I'm hearing, we don't feel like competitiveness is really part of this plan. We it says it is, we hear it is, but we don't feel that it is. What can your agency do to better partner with the business community and understand where they're coming from? And I don't expect you to agree with everything they want or everything they say. That's not what I'm asking as much as to build that avenue.
Yeah, I think right now there is some uncertainty with what the competitiveness measurement looks like because we don't have it. That's why it's in the draft plan that we need to figure it out. And so I think as we continue to convene them, meet with them, determine what elements make up this competitiveness measurement and metric, then that comfort level will start to rise.
But if you don't even have individuals on board that are ultimately going to put together the metric, right? They're going to need information on what. I mean, if I'm the mathematician, the actuarialist, whoever is going to come out with this metric, I'm probably going to have other types of information I want coming out of my own head rather than just hearing it from the industry, right? So when do we get to the point of having this individual? I mean, we're talking many years out now of even developing a metric. Am I correct?
Well, the industry in our conversations with them have committed to helping us get that data. They possess the data to help that economic impact modeling. So we have commitments from the industry representatives, and we have a huge stakeholder list, met dozens of times with these folks, including representatives from Target as recently as May, to help form this
metric.
Yes.
Right. But so nothing's going to go forward until all three pillars are addressed in a plan, correct? So in other words, we've got GHG reduction, we've got a metric, but yet we've got efficiency and competitiveness. We don't have metrics, so we're waiting for those now.
Well, yeah. I mean, go ahead.
There is a metric for system efficiency. It's really looking at the GDP load of the freight industry relative to the greenhouse gas emissions, and so how the intent being you want to grow, you want to continue to guarantee growth in the industry, but with a lower carbon footprint, and that's an efficiency. Now that's not exclusive in terms of what we look at in our side of the equation. We look at throughput, we look at delays, and so all of the action steps that we have are intended to look at all elements of efficiency. But that's one metric that we've set up just to make sure that relative to how the industry is performing economically, that we can relate that to how it's also performing in terms of emissions.
So the efficiency component, there is a metric, it's on paper.
Yes.
It's in the report.
Yes. Okay,
I didn't pick up on that, but you're telling me it's in there.
It is in there.
It is in there, and it's the. I'm sorry. Okay, I've got the value of cargo over emissions reduced. I think there's even some dispute up here as to what the metric looks like. They're not throughput or reliability. Those are not built into the metric I'm hearing. Okay. Which all play into efficiency, I would argue.
Well, in many respects, these are all built into it. So again, when you look at the entire freight industry, and you're trying to figure out how is it doing and how is it growing, it's going to depend on throughput. It's going to depend on velocity and all of those things. Now, if those are not working right, then the GDP could be lower. And so if GDP is lower, then your efficiency is going to be efficiency level is going to be lower. And so all of that factor into the GDP of the freight industry. Now, what we're trying to do is relate that to the emission load of the industry, and to assure that, just like you've heard, our ports are the cleanest ports today. They're more efficient in terms of emissions outcomes in terms of their productivity and emissions outcomes. That's the efficiency we're talking about, but it's not to the discounting of things like throughput and reliability and delays that are still out there. Those are still essential elements of what we look at in terms of system efficiency.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brown, did you have any questions?
No, I just feel that this has been a very, very informative hearing, and I will be following through to look at the things that I've missed. But we've been looking, and my staff has been watching from the office everything that's going on. And since the freight corridor is so important in my district, it's a priority. So thank you. And I'm sorry, I do have a 5:30.
Great. Mr. Garcia, any comment?
Let me just touch on a couple of things that I think are extremely important when we're talking about freight and goods movement, of course, to the economy of California. I also think that there's a great opportunity to discuss, public health of the communities in which these goods are being transported through. And I do believe that there is a fine balance that could be, struck when it comes to leveraging some of the resources that are before us, particularly the dollars that we see from the GGRF fund to help in the goods movement transition into cleaner technology. I know that is a very contested area, as I firsthand witnessed with a piece of legislation that we put forward, but I think it's a great opportunity to take care of the problem now and begin transition into cleaner, technologies tomorrow. So I appreciate the discussion that's taken place. Of course, we want to continue to build a robust economy around the goods movement and supporting our port. But I want us to also keep in mind the public health components to this entire discussion, how important that is to communities like mine, and I'm sure as communities like yours, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to touch on that, and thank you again for the information that we received today.
Thank you. We're going to go to public comment here momentarily. Just maybe if you could give us a timeline going forward of what's going to happen. We've got a draft. Now what?
Well, we have a draft. We have a draft document that's on the streets. We expect comments through July 6th. Once the comments come through, the state agencies will collate those and put together a final draft plan that will go to the secretaries, the 3 secretaries that are charged with leading the effort, and it will go from them to the governor's office.
And then?
Well, and then the action, assuming it's approved to go out, there are action steps that we've identified. If those action steps hold, those 9 action steps will continue to unfurl as we go forward. Now, like I said, this is the beginning of efforts. Each one of those action items could take multiple years to evolve and grow, and those will be the basis for the work that we will all be doing in concert to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction.
And Chair O'Donnell, if I can add to that question, it's a really important question. So, in addition to the comments being submitted by July 6th, they'll be posted on the web, so they're for all to see. We, and I think this is true of each of our respective agencies, have got a number of requests from a broad spectrum of stakeholders to sit down to discuss the plan, which we are taking those meetings. That's an important part of the process in terms of not only the receiving the comments in writing, the opportunity to process, synthesize those, but the need for the one-on-ones. And the fact is that we had a number of, I'd characterize as productive discussions. Now, is the point you made, that doesn't mean everyone sees eye to eye on all this, but I'd say productive discussions that ultimately led to the fact that at the end of the day, you have to put something on paper. You can talk to it forever without actually finding the level of clarity. By putting this draft plan out, and I would characterize it, it is a starting point. But there are a number of action items and opportunities from our perspective that not only reduce GHG emissions, many of those strategies reduce diesel particulate matter. They reduce NOx, which forms particulate and forms ozone, and it's going to be a necessary element to meet the attainment in South Coast and other regions of the state. And the fact that point that you made earlier about the key role that partnerships play, we've had excellent partnerships with the ports and many others. We're going to build on those. We need to build on those. We want that input. We need that input to refine the proposals, refine these actions. And what you'll find in the draft is there's a characterization of the concept, our assessment of the emission reductions, estimated time frame, but clearly far more detail needs to be worked through with stakeholders to craft ultimately strategies that work, that make sense, and ultimately what's the right instrument? Is it a regulation? Is it an incentive-based strategy? Is it some kind of combination? Is it phased in? All those questions are appropriate questions that need to be worked through, and that absolutely is part of the process.
Great, thank you all. And as you alluded to, I have seen it work. I think the Clean Trucks program is a great example of us partnering. And as we go forward and we look at new opportunities, I look at the facilities cap. I don't know how you could make that work through a partnership. I don't know. Maybe you've got a plan that I'm not aware of, but those are the kinds of things that you see people kind of get nervous about. And again, I think it's been shared here. It's all about finding a balance. Okay. So with that, I thank you all for your presentations. With that, we'll go to the public. If you could just take under a minute, please. Just state your name, affiliation, and your comments in under a minute, please. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Urvi Negrani from Motive Power Systems, a California-based small business that manufactures electric powertrains for zero-emission trucks. And what I want to bring your attention to is that the greenhouse gas reduction funds that are being allocated previously in the state were actually an economic driver creating jobs such as those created at our own company. 7 years ago, our company did not exist. Today, we are 48 people, and we are partnered with some of the biggest manufacturers across the U.S. That would not be possible without very strong climate legislation, investments through the California Energy Commission, and investments through CARB. So in terms of strategic value of these plans and creating jobs, there certainly is some. However, dragging your feet and not allocating monies in order to get the perfect plan is detrimental because you're prioritizing a job tomorrow as opposed to a job today. And let's just say, as a young person, I'd rather have coworkers than be a solo person. And realistically, we hired 2 new people at our company today. We have introduced new partnerships. We have 7 zero-emission truck options where 2 years ago we had 3. There is growth in this industry, and it is being crippled by the fact that the GGRF funds were not allocated this budget, that it was underfunded on the last budget by the tune of $260 million. So as we look to freight, we need to very quickly consider
you could sum up.
Funding is essential.
Thank you.
Dr. John Husing, I'm the chief economist of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. The great majority of what you're discussing, whether if it doesn't work, lands on our community with an extraordinarily high poverty rate. And the one thing I have not heard in this hearing is the unintended consequence of the regulatory process slowing down the growth of logistics, which is the one industry that has created 23.5% of our direct jobs in the last 6 years. And if you slow that down, since that industry pays $45,000 to $49,000 at a median, with 83% of the workers in occupations that have only a high school or less requirement to be in those occupations, slowing this industry down is essentially saying to our people, we're going to keep you poor as a consequence of the desire to have perfection on the air quality side and not having balance on the other side, to the effect on poverty of the unintended consequences of what these policies can do if they are not correctly balanced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair O'Donnell, Member Garcia. My name is Ryan Kenny with Clean Energy. Just last week, the LA Times ran a lengthy article. It stated in part, the state's new budget includes nothing for vehicle subsidies or other efforts to make heavy-duty trucks more environmental friendly. Member Garcia made a good faith attempt with AB 2415, which did not move forward. The solution, one of the solutions to this problem with increased greenhouse gas emissions, particulate matter, NOx, and short-lived climate pollutants is to put 0.02 NOx engines in heavy-duty trucks to alleviate the problems that we have on our roads, environmentally and public health-wise. The ARB mobile source strategy recently came out with and said that the only way to meet the 2031 8-hour ozone goal and the 2030 40% reduction in greenhouse gas goal is to put 430,000 low NOx trucks with renewable fuel on the road. So we do encourage the committee to continue to pursue vehicle incentives for heavy-duty trucks. Thank you.
Good evening, Shreyas Jethker, Coalition for Clean Air. Okay. I wanted to make a few points. First, earlier I had heard that the only people who are paying for this work and activity are the industry and the companies involved. I just want to point out, as Assemblymember Garcia noted, that public health, people are paying with their health. Those who have to live near these freight facilities and hubs. And those individuals should be taken into account. If there's going to be continued legislative hearings on this topic, I strongly suggest that panelists be invited from community-based organizations who are impacted by the freight industry. They have been silenced and left out of this process to date. In terms of the system efficiency metric, I want to point out that this is not new to the Sustainable Freight Action Plan. Caltrans has told us that they have had a system efficiency metric previously and that they are ramping it up in the Freight Action Plan. So just to point out that it is not new. And in fact, we believe that it could be even more ambitious and move beyond business as usual. In terms of the process and listening to industry, I want to just point out that we heard from Motive just a few speakers earlier, but you could do a lot more to make sure that GoBiz especially is doing all that it can to support and encourage greater business investment here in California. We're already seeing job creation in those industries developing clean air technologies and in clean transportation technologies, and we should do more to support that. And lastly, as others have noted, we need to appropriate funding for Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman and Assemblymember Garcia. Angie Minetti with the California Retailers Association. Appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective. With steadily increasing costs to move freight into California, our membership has been affected significantly across the board. And unfortunately, the way the draft plan doesn't identify specific strategies that improve effectiveness and competitiveness while offsetting the costs that it would impose on retailers and the consumers that we serve in California. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, Chair and members. Jeannie Ward-Waller with the California Bicycle Coalition. I want to align my comments with Shreyas Chetka from Coalition for Clean Air with regards to public health and ensuring that the implementation of this plan robustly involves the communities that are most impacted by the freight sector. And I also just want to make a comment with regards to the strategies about reducing congestion in freight corridors. We want to ensure that reducing vehicle miles traveled from single occupancy vehicles in those corridors is one of the primary strategies for moving more freight and trucks through those corridors. So thank you.
Thank you. And I just do want to point out, I've heard some comments, the Coalition for Clean Air is a pretty competent organization and strongly advocates for clean air, and they were here today and are here.
Mr. Chair and members, Matthew Hargan with the California Business Properties Association. A lot of what we would want to say has already been said, so I'll keep it very short. We're very concerned that the plan is not focusing enough on the competitiveness side and the effectiveness side of this. We're worried that we're going to see a lot of these logistics jobs move on, and a lot of our members' buildings don't move. We have a lot of logistics centers and a lot of warehouses that we're concerned that the goods movement through those facilities are going to be hurt if we don't take a closer look at the economic impact of this plan. Thank you.
Good evening. Francisco Uribe with the Home Depot. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this plan. As the third largest container importer, we want to echo some of the comments that were already stated by our other beneficial cargo owner, BCO Target. We feel that the plan needs a more robust metric system to track efficiency. We think that's something that's not mutually exclusive of cleaner air. We think that that is right now not a balanced approach in the plan, and we would urge for this to be more included in there. We pride ourselves on not only being a company that is successful economically, but we also pride ourselves on the environment and the goals and the achievements that we've had there. We think the state can do the same, balancing doing good on the environment as well as making sure that we are working in the most efficient manner possible. The current plan gives us a lot of reason to pause and think about our future investment in California. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Member Garcia. BNSF Railway, Don Matty. I think that the competitiveness criteria is probably the most important thing that we're concerned about right now, primarily because if we don't have a metric, then if we end up having proposals that become regulations, we won't be able to discern what the impact of those are going to be until after the fact. So we've been asking that question repeatedly, is if you have a proposal, how are you going to look at its impact between the modes? You could end up investing state dollars and have one mode benefit and have GHG's reduction for one mode, but then have another mode increase GHG, as an example. So we would like to have the metric before there's any proposals that are moved forward, especially with regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, James Jack, on behalf of the Coalition for Responsible Transportation, want to echo the two primary themes that you've heard repeatedly this afternoon on the need for a robust economic analysis of the plan, who pays for the regulations, how much, and what the impact to the economy will be, and also the need to improve upon the efficiency metrics to meet the 25% goal that is in the plan, which we're very supportive of. And the last point I wanted to bring up, it was asked from the dais earlier in the hearing, what specific strategies could be implemented, could the state partner with industry on to improve efficiency? And I would submit to the committee that for the better part of the last year, the administration did convene an efficiency strategy working group. 40 specific strategies were identified. That was primarily out of industry representatives and participation. Many of those did not make it into the plan per se, but they are out there, and we hope that they will garner a closer look as we continue to move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Paul Gonzalez representing the Port of Long Beach. We too would like to express our concerns with the competitiveness portion of this as well, and we'd also like to also express our concerns with the identifying the funding. As we all know, it takes green to go green, and in order to do this, we have to work together, and we welcome the state's partnership. So as was mentioned earlier, the port has spent the greater part of the past decade moving in this direction, so we welcome the partnership, we look forward to it, and we thank you again for the hearing.
Mr. Chair and members, Tim Schott on behalf of the California Association of Port Authorities, which is comprised of the 11 commercial publicly owned ports. And we thank you for the hearing, and we thank our agency partners that we've been working very closely with over the last number of months, including the Air Resources Board, Energy Commission, Caltrans, and the other Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. In particular, we'd like to thank GoBiz for their efforts to genuinely reach out to us and try to come up with solutions. We would note that they are heartful and resource poor, and we'd suggest that the legislature take a look at providing additional resources to help GoBiz with their very large charge of trying to help us meet the needs to remain competitive. We would also suggest that a focus on the efficiency strategies would behoove us all and would perhaps make it less necessary to implement other provisions or to be able to mitigate some of the regulatory requirements that we'll certainly need to address. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members. Mike Jake with PMSA. And obviously we'll be submitting formal comments by the deadline July 6th. So I just want to take the opportunity to say, first of all, we support the executive order moving forward. You've heard us testify here before. And in that context, I think one of the things that bears worth saying, and I think you've heard it at the last panel from Comey and from Will and from Richard, but there has been no shortage of outreach to industry during this process. And so obviously we'll have constructive criticism to bear in our writing, and we share many of the concerns that were shared to you today by our industry folks as well. But I think moving forward, we look forward to continuing to work on the basis and the dialogue that's been established. It's been robust. We look forward to continuing that, especially with GoBiz. They do have a lot of work to do, and as Tim said, they're resource constrained. We all need to work to improve that. We appreciate Chairman pointing that out today. It's something we need to work on over the course of the next year if it's going to take that long to get the resources to do this. But if we're going to go down this path and have a win-win outcome, we need to keep having the same level of discussion we've had. Thank you.
Sandy George representing Maersk and UP Railroad. I will align my comments too with some of the comments and questions of the chair and concerns of both chairs, as well as the industry partners that we've had already testify. I do hope that at some point as this revolving or evolving plan continues that there is some indication to industry what they plan to focus on first, and also what needs regulation as opposed to the incentives and other things that Mr. Corey had mentioned. I think that uncertainty has been a big problem with the plan. So hopefully that will be more certain, but certainly involving the competitive issues that have been already mentioned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Rod Brewer. I'm with Southern California Edison. Not to repeat what Mr. Jacob or Ms. George had mentioned, but as a private company and supportive of our private-public partnerships with the state interagencies and our relationships with them, it's important that for us, as we strengthen our commitment to electrifying the ports, and in working with the Port of Long Beach, for example, the Middle Harbor Project is one of those examples where we're lowering greenhouse gas emissions, cleaning the air at the ports, but also supplying good-paying jobs, good-paying union jobs for those for that site, and working with our other projects that are looking at further electrify our infrastructure. It's important that as we work at the plan and work with the agencies, that we have a full holistic approach that will definitely provide much-needed results.
Eileen Tutt with the California Electric Transportation Coalition, and I just want to say that many of my members are making billions of dollars of investment in the clean technologies that this plan supports and that this state has long supported. So I think they were not really represented well here today, the people that are actually investing in the clean technologies. We need a strong signal from the state. This plan was extensively reviewed, and we provided extensive input. I think we're ready to release it, and we're ready to move forward, and just don't cut the legs out from under all those that are creating the new next generation jobs.
Amy Mago on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. We agree with many of the comments that have already been made. A third of the jobs in the state are connected to the freight sector, and as such, economic competitiveness needs to be on equal footing with the other objectives in the action plan, including proper metrics for competitiveness and funding, and finding sustainable funding sources. Thank you.
Anthony Molina on behalf of the California Manufacturing Technology Associations. Our comments are in line with all the others that were made today. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I thank you all for your participation, the public comment as well. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.